Africans are very stupid. They don't think. They live in bushes. That is what most people say about us. That is the story repeated in classrooms, in movies, in foreign newsrooms. A story told so many times that sometimes even Africans begin to believe it. But if Africans were really stupid, why has the world fought so hard to control Africa? Why were our leaders hunted? Why were our fighters silenced? Why were the bravest voices removed the moment they began to awaken the people? Today, this is not just a speech. This is a reminder to every African fighter, every thinker, every young man and woman who refuses to accept the lie that Africa is meant to remain on her knees. Because history shows us something clear. Whenever Africa produces a leader who begins to wake the continent up, something happens. Look at Patrice Lumumba, a young leader who stood before the world and rejected humiliation. During the independence of Congo, he refused to bow to colonial arrogance. He spoke boldly about dignity, about sovereignty, about African control of African resources. But during the chaos of the Congo crisis, he was captured, tortured, and murdered. His body was destroyed to erase the evidence. Why? Because a free Congo was dangerous. Now, look at Thomas Sankara, a young captain who became president at just 33. He refused luxury. He refused corruption. He sold government cars and replaced them with modest vehicles. He vaccinated millions of kids. He planted millions of trees to stop desertification. He told African leaders to stop begging from foreign powers. He even renamed his country Burkina Faso, the land of upright people. But courage like that frightened powerful interest. During the 1987 Burkina Faso coup, he was betrayed and unalived. Another African voice silenced. Look at Amilcar Cabral, a brilliant revolutionary thinker, an agricultural engineer who have lived a comfortable life. Instead, he chose to fight for the freedom of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. He built one of the most disciplined liberation movements in Africa. But just before independence, he was assassinated. Another fighter gone. Look at Steve Biko, the man who taught black people psychological freedom. He said the greatest weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. That message shook the foundations of apartheid. In 1977, after brutal interrogation, he died in police custody. Look at Eduardo Mondlane, a scholar who became the founding founder of Mozambique's liberation movement. He united African fighters against colonial rule. Then, in 1969, he was assassinated with a Paso bomb. Look at Herbert Chitepo, a lawyer, a strategist, a freedom fighter. In 1975, he was killed by a car bomb during the liberation struggle. Look at Sylvanus Olympio, the first president of independent Togo. He tried to reduce foreign military influence. In 1963, he was killed during one of Africa's earliest post-independent coups. Look at Samora Machel, a revolutionary who led Mozambique after independence. In 1986, his plane crashed under mysterious circumstances near the South African border. Many still believe it was not an accident. Look at Chris Hani, a powerful voice in the struggle against apartheid. In 1993, just as South Africa was preparing for democracy, he was assassinated outside his home. Look at Muammar Gaddafi, Controversial, yes, but he spoke loudly about African unity. He pushed for African financial independence. He spoke about a gold-backed African currency. Then came the 2011 NATO intervention in Libya. His government collapsed and he was unalived in the chaos. And even leaders who were not assassinated were removed through coups. Look at Kwame Nkrumah, the man who declared that the independence was meaningless unless Africa was free. In 1966, while traveling abroad, he was overthrown in a coup. Look at Ahmed Sékou Touré, one of the few leaders who boldly rejected French colonial control in 1958. For that decision, Guinea was economically sabotaged for years. Look at Julius Nyerere, a leader who tried to build an African model of development rooted in dignity and self-reliance. These were not perfect men. No human being is perfect, but they shared one dangerous idea: Africa must control Africa. And every time that idea grows, something happens. Coups, sanctions, assassinations, propaganda, division. But here is the hardest truth of all: the enemy is not always outside Africa. Sometimes the betrayal comes from inside, from leaders who sell their nations for foreign approval, from elites who protect foreign interests more than African people, from citizens who forget the sacrifices of those who fought before them. This is why the fight for Africa is not just political, it is mental, because the real prison is not chains. The real prison is a mind that believes it cannot rise. So, to every African watching this, to students, to thinkers, to the artists, to the young men and women who feel the fire of justice in their hearts, you are the next fighters. Not fighters of violence, fighters of consciousness, fighters of dignity, fighters of memory, because a people who remember their heroes can never truly be conquered. Africa is not poor. Africa is not weak. Africa is not stupid. Africa is powerful but sleeping. And every generation must make a choice to remain asleep or to wake the continent. The fighters before us paid a price, and the question now is simple: will their sacrifices be forgotten, or will a new generation rise?